Hi, we're the Keenerts.
I'm Brian. This is Ann.
And we were asked, Brian was asked to be the Face of Courage for this year's Face of Courage
Yeah,
campaign.
I made her do it with me because I don't remember half of it.
Well, we're here to tell our story. Brian, you want to start?
Should I start with the first part or the?
Let's start with the first pacemaker.
Okay. Well, I was very um, active in, but for many years. But then I think it was right around 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the spring. I started working out hard again, and I just wasn't feeling very well. And I think it was. I thought it was just old age, but I get home from a long interval on my bike, and I said, Ann, I think maybe something's wrong with my heart rate monitor on my watch because it only says 54, but I just got done sprinting for about 4 minutes, and it's should be way higher. And she said I look horrible. She took my pulse and said, there's nothing wrong with your heart rate monitor. There's something wrong with you. She sent me to
Your
the
heart.
doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the doctor was considered admitting me, but I told him I had a med change recently. Maybe that was it. And so I talked him into not admitting me, and he gave me a Holter monitor to wear for 24 hours, which I did. And I taught spinning class the next morning, which I had permission to do. He just said do everything normal. And then I handed it in within 24 hours. And then a few days later, the results came back, and the doctor called me at home and said, "You're in danger. You have a serious heart condition, and you have to go to the emergency room right
No.
away." And I didn't really understand because I didn't really feel that sick, but um, he assured me that it was very serious. So got a ride to the hospital from my friend, and they took me in right away, hooked me up, and sure enough, my heart rate was only at 36 at that time. Uh,
And he
it
was
would
in.
go down to like 34. Every time it went below 34, I got really super sleepy, and they were very concerned. They called.
He had a condition called third degree heart block, which is a very serious condition, and it's usually very deadly.
Yeah, and this is just a side note, but my father was died. We didn't know how, but they were able to surmise
That he
posthumously
probably had
that
the same
he
disorder
died
as
of
Brian.
what I actually survived.
Yeah.
Anyway, then they called Dr. Hani of St. Jude's,
Mm-hmm.
and
And he came to Mercy,
and if, and
and
within 2 hours of being in the ER,
he had
they
his
were
first pacemaker.
putting in the pacemaker. But unfortunately, then over a period of about 18 months, it was discovered and determined that even in
It
spite of
wasn't
numerous
working
setting changes and adjustments, they determined that I needed a different kind of pacemaker with a dual lead into both ventricles,
Right.
so that my heart would beat
And
in
that
in
was
synchrony.
in April of 2017.
Yep. So I ended up getting a new pacemaker, which you'd think would be the end of the story, but then unfortunately, 10 days later, uh, I was having a very
on May
good.
6th.
I was having a nice day. I'd been over to my friend's house, the one who gave me the ride to the hospital, Jesse,
Jesse.
and his daughter's birthday. Then I went to the bike shop, and I was restoring my daughter's vintage Trek bike,
Mm-hmm.
and all of this I completely forgot. I don't remember what happened from here. Apparently, I came into the house after hanging out with Ann in the backyard and
Mm-hmm.
fixing the bike and whatnot. And then I just went blank. I have no memory from here on in of what happened of that day, so I'll let Ann describe this part.
So we were out on the deck drinking iced tea and having a great time, and we were decided to walk out and pick up some sticks. And I was picking up sticks, and I noticed Brian wasn't around. I think he might have went in the house, but I wasn't sure. And then all of a sudden, I heard what's called a death rattle. It's agonal breathing. As a nurse, I've heard it before. And as soon as I heard that noise, I hightailed into the house. I found
didn't
him
hear
laying
it.
on the, yeah, of course you didn't hear it. I found
I
him
don't
laying
remember
on
it.
the floor, and I knew it was cardiac because it wasn't respiratory. Of course, it was heart related. And he was.
I was laying very properly on the floor.
Yeah, he was, and I don't know how we can laugh about this.
Yeah.
But he was laying on the floor, and
I was turning blue apparently.
yeah, and so I dialed 911, put it on speakerphone, put it on the side of Brian, and then I started CPR right away, chest compressions. And the 911 dispatchers was wonderful, and she of course notified the EMS,
and she yelled at her.
I'm not gonna tell that story. So the EMS came, and as I'm still doing CPR, they were setting up, and I remember thinking to myself, I must be doing this right, because they would have took over if I wasn't doing it
She
right.
did a really good job.
But needless to say, they took over, and I stepped back, and there's nothing that can describe what it's like to do CPR on somebody you love. You know, it's different as a nurse when you're doing it on your patients and you care about
It was
your
like 20
patients.
minutes, but I figured it out.
So when I stepped back and they started CPR, and they had him hooked up to the AED, which is the shocking machine, and they shocked him 3-4 times before he actually got a rhythm back, and it was just wonderful that he actually got a rhythm back.
And the way I figured out that she must have done CPR, I didn't have a meaningful heartbeat for 20 minutes, is because the time phone records of when she dialed 911, and then contrasted it, the first
When I
person she
called my
called when
sister.
they got a heart rate
Yep.
was her sister,
And it was
Anita,
about 20 minutes. So,
and some seconds.
so we know that for 20 minutes,
She was my heartbeat
his heart wasn't
for 20
working
minutes.
on its own, that we were
So that's a
by
long
an
time.
EMS. So as the ambulance come, they intubate him, they got IV lines going. They say, what hospital do you want to go to?
Did I get my color back?
Yeah, your color, well, not the best though.
Damn.
So now you made me lose track of my. Okay.
Oh no, yeah.
No, okay.
So
So
go to Mercy.
they had said they said, which hospital do you want to go to? And I said, well, Mercy, my hospital. I remember saying my hospital.
I would have
thinking,
agreed, but I really don't remember.
Yeah, you would have.
have.
But I wanted him at my hospital, where I knew the staff was awesome,
Yep.
and where he was
And they
going
were.
to get the quality care that he needed.
Yep.
So we get to the hospital, or they take Brian to the hospital. I follow in a police escort car or a ride, whatever. And we're in the ER, and they've got him hooked up to the ventilators and everything. And they're doing an echocardiogram, and I could see on the echocardiogram something was floating in his heart, and I realized that it was his pacemaker leads. So his pacemaker leads, the first two that were put in
one.
2 years earlier, or less than 2 years
Yeah.
early, had actually migrated out.
The new
into his
infrastructure
heart.
was fine, but the old lead
Yeah,
was
the new one
apparently
they put
came
in
out.
10 days earlier was working. That's what was keeping him alive.
Yeah.
So it's
So
it was
anyway,
crazy.
they
So he
put me
ends
in a coma,
yeah.
and
They ended up
and
they
they
had
gave
it-
me a temporary pacemaker in my
I
leg,
thought I was telling the story.
in my leg,
Okay.
temporary.
So
for 24 hours, I
yeah,
was in a coma.
Cardiologist
Yeah,
put
definitely.
a temporary pacer in through his groin up into his heart, and then they kept him
They strapped me
under.
down.
Yes, they did. They kept him under for till the next morning, and then he had a permanent pacemaker put in with the. Brian, why don't you tell us exactly
it's
what
a-
you have in your heart?
A double lead biventricular dual chamber pacemaker with a defibrillator this time, because if you die, apparently you get
Yay!
all.
So
everything.
next time if something like this happens, it's going to shock him right
Yeah,
away.
I couldn't die if I wanted to. No.
No. So, yeah, and then his short-term memory was shot when he
Yeah,
did wake up,
sure.
and
I was like
he
Dory.
was just, he was like Dory. He, yeah, his short-term memory was totally shot for a few days. He was
Yeah.
swollen. But the care that he
I looked
received.
like hell. I looked like I had died.
You look better than you did when you were dead. But so, but the care he received, we are just so thankful for Mercy Medical Center, and I mean, he just got the best quality care. It was just, we're just so impressed with the doctors, the nurses, the staff, everybody. It was just wonderful with our care there.
And one of the
And it's
things
not
that
just because it's my hospital.
one of the things apparently I was told over and over by my wife, as I couldn't remember anything. Every time I'd wake up, I'd ask the same questions over and again. And one of the
Everybody
things she
was so
would,
patient.
one of the things she kept saying is, "And you're retired now," and I didn't ever
Yeah,
really
yeah.
buy into that.
We
And
didn't give him. We
I
didn't give
was
him much choice but
I was
retirement.
basically told, I think Anne was told this way before me, or maybe more times, but that I may be disabled and I may
Yeah.
not have a recovery.
His
And
quality of
while I
life.
was in my medical
It's
coma,
questionable.
they even had speculation of whether I would uh, have come back to consciousness or not, or how much cognitive functioning I would have, just because I was out for so long. And she doesn't like to hear that, but apparently there was concern
Right.
that I might not get my short-term memory back, and
Yep.
some people
But
think I
he
haven't.
did. So let's go on to
Okay.
when
So
you
the-
start
one of
remembering
the-
in our discharge.
Yeah, so anyway, I was discharged, and for a couple of months there was a point of contention on whether I would retire or not, because I didn't really feel ready. I was only 55 and a half, and I just thought I was too young, but they thought it would be dangerous for me to go back to work. And the highlight and the greatest thing that happened to me throughout this whole process was the cardio rehab therapy that I received through Mercy Medical Center. They gave me the best staff and the best support, and they gave me real time biofeedback of my heart rate, my blood pressure, my progress from day to day, and they kept on telling me that I was working too hard. And it was hard to listen to that, because in my mind, you're supposed to work hard to get better. But they were right with me the whole way, and they put up with my bad behaviors and whatnot. And I did make within 2 months, we just pulled the plug on the whole thing about going back to work, even though I was making
He
progress.
deserves to retire. He died.
But part of it was I didn't want the people that relied on somebody like me to work, so I retired, and that made my wife happy. But then the good news is I made what you could consider a full recovery. My ejection fraction went back up to 50-55, which is in the normal range. Probably not quite as high as it was before, but it's possible.
We'll take it.
But it's in the normal range, and I've been able to do 2 Race the Lakes since. I'm more healthy now than I've been in maybe the 10 years prior, when I think I had the condition in a gradually getting worse way. But now I feel like I got 10 years taken off of my life, or younger, I should say.
Can you tell them why you like the cardiac rehab, like the real time?
Oh yeah, they were able to measure me from day to day in real time what my blood pressure and my heart rate was. But they were also able to show me like how much I was improving from day to day and week to week, and it was clear that I was getting better. And I found that to be very encouraging and self-reinforcing, so that I continued to be very dedicated toward that. And I'm still very dedicated toward conditioning and exercise to this day. Not young anymore, but I'm well and healthy for my age, which I'm very grateful for. But all of the great staff and great nurses, the great doctors, the great cardio rehab therapists, they all helped me immensely. But if it wouldn't have been for my wife, who was there to save my life in the first place, I wouldn't have been able to have access to all the other people that helped me after I came back to life. So my wife is the one real miracle in my life, and she gave me every day that I've had since then as like a special extra gift that I get as a result of my wife saving me in the first place. So thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
So what should we do now, Dick?
No, you forgot the best part.
Oh!
You were doing
here.
so well.
No,
we were so
it's okay.
well.
It's okay. It's good. No, just pretend we cut that part out. The great thing is, and I get to walk my daughter down the aisle in September. And she's getting married to Steve, and that's going to be the best. So, and I have to lead that ceremony, which is going to be also very frightening. And
I think you did a good job.
Are we good now?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. See you later.